first of all, thank you to 707 Hub for having us. My name is Jim, this is Alan. We've been doing this show for, it'll be 4 years in January.
Yeah.
Which is wild. So it's been a ball. We actually had intended to do like a couple episodes when we started, and then we realized that a lot of people have side passions. So we need to talk
The original plan was for 5 episodes.
It really was, yes.
We are much far beyond 5. We're working towards 100 now.
Totally. So we're excited about that. And really this hub is dedicated to entrepreneurs and to making plans, making hopefully dreams come true, and just sharing ideas. That's a fun part. So we have the pleasure of bringing on folks who have their stories to tell, who have some level of Marquette connection, and want to share those stories with you, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the awesome. That's what I would say. And we have a great guest today.
Yeah, absolutely. We have Kristie Hall. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the company. I'm sorry, just
True
like
Grace.
the name, True Grace.
Yes. Yeah, so I brought some of the bottles, you can see it, but we're a supplement company. When we launched, we started with fish oil, probiotics, and multivitamins, and we've since expanded into other categories, including children's vitamins.
Sure.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Now tell us about your background, like where
Okay.
you're from, where you grew up, and what brought you here to this moment.
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, a suburb about 20 minutes outside of Milwaukee. And both my grandparents went to Marquette, both my parents went to Marquette. I went rogue and didn't go to Marquette. I went to Arizona State University, but always, my parents have had season tickets to Marquette for years and years. So been growing up, coming here. My mom's still very involved. She's on board here. So I've always loved the university, which is kind of my connection to Marquette. But I studied business and marketing at Arizona State and graduated. And my dad was an entrepreneur, so he graduated from Marquette with a business finance major. And then he started his own business in real estate development and construction, which became really successful in this area. He actually built most of the Walgreens that you see. He partnered with Walgreens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I kind of always was inspired to be an entrepreneur, ironically, because I also saw how stressful being an entrepreneur could be. But anyways, he unfortunately got diagnosed with cancer when I was in college. I moved home right after college, back to Wisconsin here. He passed away at the age of 51, and we were left with this gigantic company that none of us knew how to run. So we ended up selling the company, and we started a family foundation with some of those funds, and then I was able to start my own company with some of the funds from his beautiful company that he had started.
Sure. Very cool, very cool. Nobody has ever really said that they've gotten into it for the stress. I think you are the absolute first that I've ever heard that said, I really want to start a business to be stressed out. It is certainly a very natural component of it though. And I was gonna say growing up, seeing that happen, being around that business, was there any other aspects of seeing your dad's business kind of develop and grow that really made you draw in that this might be something besides the stress that might be interesting for you?
I mean, I've always been a really creative person, so that was I was in the business world for a while, and I just always felt like there was this whole other side of my personality and my talents that I wasn't tapping into. I was just in sales and hitting numbers and the margins and all this business talk, and I just felt like it was such a miss for me to not be able to explore that creative side that I always loved doing. And I think being an entrepreneur and seeing my dad, really the only reason that I ever took the leap of faith to start my own business, because people will tell you it's so hard and it's so stressful and all this stuff, which of course I knew. But my dad ran this huge company, and he still never missed a swim meet or one of my basketball games. And he was my coach for teams, and I was able to see that he had an amazing work-life balance. He was so connected in the community. He volunteered on many different boards. And I just loved seeing him and the way that he networked and managed people. And that was always really inspiring to me, the culture of the company. And so working for various other supplement companies in the industry was another thing that really inspired me to start our business, because so many of the companies in our industry have sold to Procter & Gamble, to Nestle, to Clorox, and their culture and their mission goes down the drain. So I really wanted to start a company that was mission driven and that really focused on culture.
Sure.
I love the prospect, I'm gonna call it something's missing, in the term that you were doing the work, you know, in sales, doing all these things, but there was always something missing. And I had that in my life too, where maybe I'm too focused on like my day-to-day job, and I really need to go into more passionate part. And I think it rings true, you know, for all of you, that as you're doing, you know, the work that you're up to, you know, something might be missing. And whatever that is, that creative side, or whether it's whatever that passion is, that's a really good gut instinct to go pursue it. And I think when you feel that, like, don't ignore the something's missing. You said it, and that's kind of the phrase I'm rolling with, but I think that's so critical that you notice that and then acted on it, and then also that's something to look up to and aspire to be a, you know, as you saw your dad living it out, that's the missing thing of where you want to get to, and you made a plan to get there, which I think is really cool. And that's hard to do. I think that's a really difficult thing, but when you are aspiring to hit that something's missing, that's what it can come out.
Yeah, exactly.
Growing up, and you said you were in sales and doing with all these other supplements first, what kind of sparked you to go down that path initially?
Yeah.
To get involved with those first companies? Was it just kind of to get your foot in the door in sales, or kind of?
It actually was through my dad's cancer journey. So, you know, I was always an athlete, and of course was really interested in health and wellness, but then going through the cancer journey with my dad, my mom's a nurse, and we worked with a lot of naturopathic practitioners, and I really saw how supplementation could change the quality of someone's life, even when, you know, he was on chemo and radiation. And so I knew I wanted to go kind of down the wellness path, and then it just kind of dawned on me, like, this is actually the perfect opportunity for me to get a job in business and or marketing and work for a company that is about health and wellness. So I got my first job right out of college with Standard Process, which is a supplement company headquartered in Palmyra, Wisconsin. And they actually distribute to practitioners, but it's a really cool company because they have their own farms and they grow their own ingredients and make them into their supplements. So I learned a ton working for them, and kind of just, you know, then worked my way up working for other various companies in the industry.
So one of the differences about True Grace too is that it's not only good for the person, but it's good for the environment as well. Has that always been something that you've been kind of, you want to make a priority as well?
Yeah, and that was really at the forefront of another reason why I decided to jump in and start, as I mentioned, with a lot of these companies selling to Nestle and Procter & Gamble. As you can imagine, those companies are all about margin, and so any of those beautiful brands that were about the planet or the environment, as soon as they get bought out, that goes out the door. So it really was not only just like my personal passion for preserving the planet, but also knowing that it was the perfect opportunity for us to come in and start a brand that is unique and different from any other company, supporting the health and well-being of people and planet. And we did that in a lot of different ways, everything from, I designed all the packaging, it's all 100% post-consumer recycled plastic, and then for every bottle purchased, there's plastic pulled out of oceans and waterways in Indonesia, which is where you see those big plastic islands. So we've got a really cool story with our packaging, but then also our ingredients. So we also source ingredients that do the least harm, that are regeneratively farmed or organically farmed. So in many different ways, we do our part in give back programs to support the planet, and that's really been one of the biggest differentiators, besides the fact that we're extremely high quality. But when we go into retailers, they like can't say no, because they're like, oh my gosh, finally a brand that is like super high quality but also cares about the planet.
Yeah.
Did you ever run into, you know, maybe when you're developing the brand kind of thing, somebody that is like, you know, you could make X you know, amount of money more if you did this thing that actually turns out to be really, really terrible for the environment. But they're like, but it'll make you more money. Like, did anybody kind of try to persuade you that way?
A lot. And you know, we started in March of 2020, which I'm sure you all really remember. Like,
great time to
What
start a
happened then?
business.
The
Great
worst time in everyone's life. And so during that time, supply chain was a wreck. And so one of our biggest challenges was finding packaging, period. And there were a few times where we thought we're just gonna have to fold the company because we didn't want to do packaging that did a lot of harm, like virgin plastic and all these things. We couldn't find post-consumer recycled plastic, but we actually had to fire someone for the reason that you just said. We hired this guy in operations, and he could not get over that we wanted to spend more money on, you know, cardboard or plastic that actually was better for the environment. He just could not get over it. And so we ended up having to let him go because he kept being like, but this costs more.
Yeah.
But this is going to be a harder supply chain. We were like, we know. He just couldn't. He couldn't do it. So we had to let him go.
I think it's a good point. Like, that person was probably talented and had a lot to bring to the table, but like when they don't align to your mission, they don't align to your mission. Like, how was that? And I think generally, like, how tough is that to keep true, and maybe you got to weed through some talented people to find the people that are not only talented but align with who you are and what you're all about. Is that a difficult thing to find?
Really important in our hiring process, and you know, we've seen that, to your point, like we made that mistake in the beginning of hiring the smartest person in the room, and it often didn't work out for that reason. They just didn't understand, or they didn't feel in their heart, and the mission didn't resonate with them. And so now it's a huge part of our interview process. Is you don't have to be like a heavy supplement user or like, you know, Miss Environmental, but you actually do have to care about health and wellness and have something in your heart that like cares about the planet a little bit, or it's not going to work, because every aspect of our business, it's incorporated into it. And so people really have to understand it and feel it in order to do the day-to-day work.
It's critical. Now, this wasn't an overnight success, so talk about some of the initial, like getting buy-in or getting some of these meetings with these folks to actually have the product be sold. And how long do you feel like it took from square one to, okay, I feel like we're actually in a spot where I feel successful, you know, whatever the term is for you?
I mean, it took a while. We're still fairly new. So we started the business in March of 2020. We didn't launch product until October of 2021.
Sure.
And that's because of COVID, and getting, you know, meetings or ingredients or any of that stuff was really a challenge. But it was scary, you know, especially because of the time we were in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like, I feel like when our moment where we were like, wow, okay, we've made it, we're gonna do okay, was when some of the bigger chains that are really hard to get into, like Sprouts, for example. We don't have Sprouts here, we have Fresh Time, but that's another one. Fresh Time and Sprouts, you know, 450 stores. When they finally decided to bring our brand in, it's like, okay, we're gonna be okay, now we need it. And also same with Amazon. Amazon's a very difficult path for many reasons, but all of a sudden we just started seeing our Amazon business grow and explode naturally, and you know, seeing new customers come, but also what's most important is seeing customers that continue to repurchase because they like what they're seeing and the results they're getting.
Yeah.
So I feel like the big aha moment we launched in 2021 was probably a full year later, like October of 2022. It took like a year being on the market before we really started to make a name for ourselves and get into some of these big chains.
So patience is a virtue.
Yeah, absolutely.
This won't happen right away. If you really care about something, stick with it and feel the trials and tribulations. And if you're really dedicated to it, that success will come. And success is a relative term, depends on what that means to you, but you have a definition of it, which is awesome. So that's a really good takeaway.
Yeah.
I'm curious because also like you launched right during the pandemic, as people are kind of, but also as people were probably putting a little bit more emphasis on self-care, just in general.
Yeah.
Were you able to kind of craft a product and maybe adjust in real time as you saw like more people are into this particular aspect of self-care, or they're looking at this, like, did that kind of sway you into like what products you're gonna develop?
I wouldn't say what products we were gonna develop, but more so how we marketed them.
Okay.
So, you know, with multivitamins and probiotics, those in general are amazing for immune health and keeping people, you know, day-to-day healthy. And so as challenging as starting a business during COVID was, the best business you could start during COVID would be a supplement company.
This one.
Because so many people were looking for ways to stay healthy and not get sick, especially when kids went back to school. So when we launched in October, kids had just gone back to school for the first time, and parents were panicking because kids were getting sick, and no one knew, like, do you test your kids, do you not, do they have COVID, do they not? And so we really targeted, you know, those consumers that had kids going back to school or grandkids going back to school, and how do you stay healthy? You take a multivitamin, you take a probiotic. So it was really just in how we marketed it.
Okay.
And how are you reaching your customers? Is it social media? Is it a lot of word of mouth? Is it a combo of those? Like, where are you usually focused on getting?
It's really a combo. We actually call it soul to soul marketing, which is, you know, person to person.
I love that, yeah.
That's really how we've built our company, through sales reps across the country that we've hired, through our staff, and then of course, like, through storytelling. A brand like ours requires a lot of storytelling, because why would someone spend $50 on a multivitamin when they could buy it at Costco for $12?
Yeah.
Right.
So we are on Amazon, we sell direct to consumer on our own website, and then we also are in stores all across the country. So because we have so many different channels, we have many different touch points with consumers, but I love telling people this, we spend $0 on social media advertising, none. And we also spend $0 on our direct-to-consumer website, like advertising, and it grows like 70% year over year.
Wow.
So
So
that's
the word of
all
mouth is
word
there,
mouth.
yeah.
Yeah, and reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah, reviews. We have great Amazon reviews too, which is huge.
Sure. Now, when you're selling something that is healthcare adjacent like this, I would assume, you know, self-care, over Amazon, over a big platform, I'm sure that there's like regulations and things that you had to learn about along the way. Tell us a little bit about that process and figuring out like what kind of, you know, how you had to modify things maybe to adjust to different kind of regulations.
Yeah, there are a lot of regulations in our industry, which is great because, again, you know, Amazon is just like the Wild West. It used to be anyways, now they are getting stricter, but it's really important because you could make a claim on the front of the package, for example, and should the FDA see it, they could literally shut down your company overnight.
Like everything?
Everything. We get audited. In fact, the FDA showed up at our door. They don't tell you they're coming. And they pull up in black SUVs, and they get out of their car, and they walk in suits, and the next 3 days, they look through your computer, they read all your labels, they look through your files, and they do a full audit, and luckily we passed.
So like the movies are like true, but
It
that's
really,
like,
I'm not
yeah.
kidding, this
Oh
just
my
happened.
gosh.
I was out of town, my husband almost had a heart attack. He's our CEO, he's like, you're never gonna believe who's
Oh my
here.
gosh.
And I was like guessing all these cool people, and he's like, the FDA.
So like Mark Wahlberg comes in and you go dressed up, yeah, wow.
Yeah, no,
That's
so
terrifying.
I mean, we obviously learned very quickly about what you can say and what you can't say, and I'd say in anyone starting a business, it is critically important that you budget appropriately for legal fees. We spend a ton on attorney fees, and I know every industry is different, not every industry has as many regulations as our industry, but still, even just trademarks, like trademark infringement is also huge. Finding a URL that's not taken, and we trademarked sayings, but we had to pay attorneys to run it. So anyways, you know, you always, it's what the one piece when people are starting companies that they forget about. And it's actually one of the most expensive pieces of starting a business is paying attorneys.
I would say, would you say it's the biggest hidden cost then probably is legal?
Yeah, but it like kills me when I look back at year one of what we spent. But in turn, we haven't gotten sued. We passed the FDA with flying colors. So had we not had that guidance.
Here they come.
That was them driving by right there. Sorry.
Yeah,
This
so
whole
no,
thing's
it's
set.
all worth it. It's all worth it, but it is like a painful part of the process to be like, gosh, the things we could have done with that money instead of paying attorneys.
What are you proudest of in building this? If you take a look back at the journey, what sticks out to you is like, hell yeah. Like,
I think really just because it was such a difficult path that we went down starting in COVID, that there were many chances where we could have taken shortcuts and been like, we can't get this ingredient, this regenerative organic ashwagandha, let's just go with the non-organic. And we had moments where we were like, maybe we should just do the non-organic, and we never did. And so I think what I'm most proud of is like we never veered off of what we set out to do in the beginning. And we stayed truly transparent, and that's a huge part of like if you look at our website, like we're all about transparency. There's a lot of supplement companies out there that are smoke and mirrors and say they're doing something and they're not, and vice versa. And so looking back from when we started, we had to make a lot of difficult decisions, but we always stuck true to our mission and never veered from that. And I think, you know, I'm really, really proud of that. It was not easy.
Yeah. When you were faced with a challenge like that, because I would assume that a lot of companies don't want to, you know, maybe give away the secret sauce, or somebody that else is in your field, right? They don't want to give away the secret. Where did you kind of turn to for some guidance? Did you have, you know, connections in other companies that you could at least bounce some things off of? Or was it more like how did you kind of go about that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons we learned is every industry is really small and you never want to burn a bridge. And so in our industry, it's kind of funny because we're in, you know, all about the plan, but we say we're all recycled. And it's so true. It's like so-and-so that I worked at Garden of Life is now at Mega Food, and you know, the other rep that I worked with is now at Garden of Life. And so everyone's kind of recycled in the industry. And so we brought together like this powerhouse team that had all been in the industry for a long time and all had so many connections. And so anytime we had really challenging decisions or needed guidance and an outside perspective, we would just call, even sometimes like CEOs of competitors that we knew and that we had grown to love over, you know, many years, that we needed advice. And so I think, you know, people really get behind these startup companies and they want you to do well, even if you're competition. If your heart is in the right place and you have a good product, there's room for everyone. And that's kind of what we felt like. We really felt the love from a lot of these big companies. And they wanted us to do well, and they, in some cases, helped us when we faced a challenge.
Sure.
In terms of, you know, obviously getting the product in stores, I'm assuming you faced some rejection.
Yeah.
What was that like to be like, the thing I've poured my heart and soul into, they don't want it? Like
Yeah.
is that tough to recover from, or were you wired to be like, okay, next one?
I feel like in my heart I knew they'd come around, and I understood, you know, their perspective is they only have so much shelf space, and those are their dollars sitting on the shelf. So you can't like criticize why is this here? Like they invested their money in those products on the shelf. And so I just, you know, most of us in our company knew the retail business and how it works. And I knew like if they said no, they would start to see us popping up online and in other chains, and that they would come back. And so it happened. Like Sprouts was a perfect example. They were like, no, we don't have room. We can't fit you. It's 450 stores, blah, blah, blah. And then we got into Fresh Time. And then we got in, and they were like, oh,
maybe we'll
you're
come
in
now.
Fresh Time? Oh, can you send us your products again? We want to try them. And then they brought us in. So it just took time.
I love that outlook, because it's like, you know what, if you get a no, you keep doing your thing and watch them crawl back to you when you realize how successful you are. Like that's such a good next step, you know, and like a little petty, because I was kind of like, all right, you know what, then I'm gonna keep going, and then you come on back, which is just awesome.
I think a healthy pettiness.
That's exactly what. Yeah,
I think that's all right.
I'm way more petty than anything, but I you know, it's like you know what, they don't want it, but they're gonna want it later.
Yeah.
Giddy up.
That is kind of what we went with.
I love
we were
it,
like,
yeah.
oh, it'll be so awesome that day when Sprouts calls us, and they're like, okay, fine, we want your product. And they did. We were like, yes.
So when you get a call like that, in terms of production, like what is your immediate steps? Like how do you go about like scaling up this business to be like, oh, we now have to stock for 450 more stores nationwide?
I mean, it's a huge challenge because not only, you know, all of our products have different timelines in the supply chain of how long it takes to get it from the time that you place the order, but it's also a cash suck, you know? So it's like we have to pay for that product up front before Sprouts is gonna pay for it. So it's a huge challenge that we really have learned to plan better for. So it's like, okay, like right now we're trying to get into Natural Grocers, which is a 300 store chain. And we've kind of like put it in our cash flow statement and planned it in our budget so that we have it sitting there so that when they place their order, we're not like, oh no,
Oh crap,
now
what do we
what?
do? Right.
How do we fund this huge order?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
proactive thinking is so critical. I mean, if you truly want to grow, you have to have that planned out. Like, it's one thing to be
Yeah.
like, we'll get there one day, but it's also like, we need to have the numbers to make sure that we can support getting there one day. I think
Yeah.
That's a huge takeaway.
How early in advance do you kind of plan for those kind of moves? Is it a quarter ahead or is it half a year? Like what are you looking at for that?
We plan a whole year out, but usually we have a fairly good idea. They have what's called like a refresh cycle for bigger chains, and so we have what their refresh cycle is, which means they look at everything on their shelf in that category. So say like multivitamins will be March, and they'll look at everything in their set, and then they'll decide this is getting booted and this we're bringing in. So for all of our chains that we want to be in, we have that mapped out and we know and we've planned for it.
Sure.
It's a lot of planning.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like a ton of work.
Yeah.
And a year out to even think what the market is gonna look like and to even just kind of guesswork. Do you pivot on that? I'm just assuming you have to, right?
We have an amazing forecasting tool, and our team changes our forecasts by the week.
Okay.
So we'll forecast for the whole year down to the item, down to the amount of units we're gonna sell in 1 week on Amazon and Sprouts and Fresh Time and everything. And on a weekly basis, we change it and it adjusts it for the year.
That is kind of wild to have to think like Jim is gonna buy one of these
Yeah.
12 months from now.
Well, anything that you're dealing with an expiration date, that's why we have to do it. So it'd be different if it was clothing or candles, but if you're dealing with food or supplements or beverages, anything with an expiration date, you have to be really, really good at forecasting, because the worst thing that can happen is you order too much and now you have to throw all this out because
Right.
it's past expiration.
Yeah.
Which sounds like my parents' fridge at home.
But, oh my, don't even get me started on my mom's
Expired.
Yeah.
Shout out to my parents.
There's a lot of reels about
Yeah.
parents' fridges.
I bet.
Yeah.
So you said reviews are a big portion, a big driver of word of mouth kind of thing. And do you have anything? Do you work with influencers at all? I know you don't pay for social media. but
Right.
do you have any kind of influencer flow that you send the product or anything like
We
that?
actually are just starting to dabble in that. Now that we have some really loyal customers, instead of paying influencers I always joke, I'm like, instead of paying an influencer $2,000 to sit in her jammies at home and be like, I love True Race, which doesn't work for supplements anyway. We're reaching out to our top 100 customers and offering for them to be brand ambassadors, where we'll give them new products to try, free product, and with the hope and ask that they will post about it and tag us in it, because user-generated content is much better than a random influencer that is very clearly paid by you to talk about your product. So
Yeah.
we really want customers that truly have taken our product, that have experienced it and love it, that will go on their own social media and post about it and tag us, and then we can use it.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a good example, because I think a lot of people just assume you need to have like an influencer, like you said, like that someone who's out there, and it's just like, why don't you take your customers that love you and
Yeah.
let them
Well,
speak
it's
for it.
authentic marketing.
Very
It's
genuine,
right.
which
Yeah.
is true to your brand and what you
Yeah.
want to build. And that's had to be a decision you all made, and I think it's a good one, especially following what you've built, and people can tell. I mean, if
Yeah.
it's like an authentic, guy, like, this is what I want to do, I love this product, and you guys should buy it too. Like,
I think more than anything, people know when you can tell when it's the opposite, when it's clearly this fake thing.
Yeah, like
When they're like turning to the camera and being like, make sure the label's
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
I love this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just so
Yeah.
we're clear, Ellen and I can be a product ambassador for you.
That is-
I'll send you
Yes.
some product.
Yes.
There we go.
That's
See,
great.
that's something out of
Yeah,
this.
right? How many iterations of this does it take to get the product and the packaging that you want? Like, this had to have taken a long time to actually come up with the one.
Yeah.
Was it like 10, 20, 50?
Yeah, it's kind of fun to look back. I'd say, it depends on the product, but definitely the packaging took a lot of different, trial and error, because these are custom made for us.
Oh, yeah.
So we went back and forth on those quite a bit, and same with the labels, but the formulations, we pretty much have it dialed in, like, this is what we want. We have the formula, we work with the manufacturers. So it's really just more the design side of everything, which is
Sure.
the side that I lead. That's the creative part that I love. I do all the packaging and
That's where it
design.
comes out. Yeah.
But it also takes a lot of time to get it right and make sure that it's something that's going to resonate with consumers and that people can read it clearly and that you're conveying the message well. So yeah, looking back, like this actually looks quite different from what we launched with 3 years ago.
Yeah, and ultimately it is your biggest advertising because when you see it on the shelf, it has to be something that's welcoming to that consumer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what is, as you're thinking about the future, what you've built now and what you want it to become, what's next, do you feel like for you all, maybe a year down the road or 2 or 3 years down the road, what's coming? Don't give away any secrets.
Yeah, yeah.
But
450 more stores soon, right?
Other than the 450 stores.
Yeah, I mean, obviously growing and expanding, but going international is next. So Dubai is a huge, huge market for the supplement industry, and an advantage of Dubai is you don't have to have bilingual packaging.
Oh, sure.
So like entering Europe, for example, is a bit of a nightmare because you have to deal with all these different languages. We'd have to label for all the different languages. In Dubai, you don't have to do that, and it's all through pharmacy. So
Awesome.
that's kind of our next like big thing outside of growing just in the U.S.
Is that something you're currently like working on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Is it difficult? Like, is it a tough process?
We had a connection, so not as difficult as it probably is for most
Yeah.
brands. We had a former colleague that we worked with who kind of runs the Dubai business for American companies now.
Okay.
And he knows all the owners of the pharmacy chains that, he can help us get into. So it's gone much smoother than we originally thought it would,
Awesome.
which is helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, as you're looking out at a crowd of students and folks listening to the show who maybe, aren't sure if they want to start following, their passion or maybe a standstill or have tried, what's something you would tell them of just kind of, next step of thinking about, like, how do I actually go about this? Or some of the things that were in your head when you started going after this and when it became tangible that you could do it?
I think just following your heart and listening to your gut is really important because, like I said, for a long time I wanted to do it and I just never felt like the time was right. And when I finally felt that in my heart and my gut that like now is the time, I feel like that's a big reason why it was successful.
Yeah.
Because I was patient and I waited for the right timing. And I don't know, I think just not letting fear take over. It's scary to be on your own and start your own thing, but it's also really important that you're humble enough to ask questions and network. And that's really how we were able to do it, is like, never did we go into it like we're know-it-alls, even though we had worked for a lot of the other companies. We went into it like, who can we ask? Who can we get help from? Who can give us advice? And I think that was, really pivotal in helping us get off the ground and get launched.
Awesome. And the FDA does exist, and they will come.
They will come.
Yes, if you learned anything from this,
Yes.
they're around and they have the black vans.
Yeah, they're
It's as intimidating. No, that's a Marquette.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
It's
the FDA. Yeah, now I'm on edge.
If people want to find out a little bit more about what you're doing with True Grace, if they want to follow you guys, where is the best place to kind of get connected with the brand and kind of learn the backstory?
Yeah, so we have a ton of information. Our website is truegracehealth.com. And from there, you can kind of navigate through the site, all the information. My story is on there, all of our products are on there. And then, of course, True Grace Health, we're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the things.
There you
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all Kristie, thank you for being here. I know we're going to have a Q&A here in a second, but it was an awesome conversation. Alan, what do they want to do if they want to find us?
Well, if they want to find us, we're the Hustling Sideways podcast,
Right?
wherever you're getting better at it. We're the Hustling Sideways podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are on YouTube, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn.
That's it.
I think that's all.
Yeah, that's where
Probably
we're
all.
at. Yeah.
We're just Google us. We're out there. So thank you guys so much. Thank you again to the 707 Hub for being willing to host us. And Jim,
Keep on hustling.
you guys.
You can.
Yes.